I am going to talk to you in the next 20 minutes about public opinion on global warming and what we can do about it. More specifically, about an audience segmentation that we conducted that identified 6 groups among Americans who share common beliefs, behaviors, levels of concern about climate change, and then I'm going to talk to you about what we can do in order to communicate more effectively with those groups. The research I'm going to talk about is part of a collaboration between Yale and George Mason University. We've been working together since 2008. Was a survey, a nationally representative survey back in 2008 that first identified the 6 audience segments, and we have been tracking them ever since in biannual surveys. Here are the 6 groups. You can see they range from the alarmed on the left. That is the group of Americans who are most concerned about climate change, who most support national policies to reduce emissions. They're the most motivated to take action themselves, and they care the most about the issue. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the dismissive at the far right, who are equally convinced that global warming is not occurring. They're the ones who are likely to believe that it is a scientific hoax. And the groups in between vary in terms of their level of certainty that global warming is or is not occurring, and their engagement with the issue varies. Since 2008, when we first identified these groups, you remember in 2000, right at the end of 2008, when the recession happened, ClimateGate happened, there was a big drop in the US in terms of belief that global warming is occurring. Since then, so what we saw originally was 18% of the public was in the alarmed group, 7% was in the dismissive. We have recovered some since then, but not completely. Also, the disengaged group, which is the group of people who just never think about this issue, they don't know anything about it, it's just not on their radar at all. They have shrunk so that they're a very small proportion of the public as well, which suggests the attitudinal polarization that's taking place. I'm going to talk to you first about what the groups believe and then about their levels of engagement with the issue and the implications of that for communication. The beliefs that I want to focus on here are beliefs that a growing body of research is showing are critical in terms of getting people to support carbon emission policies in their desire for a broad societal response to climate change so that both the government and citizens themselves and corporations and business take action to reduce their emissions, and that are also associated pretty strongly with political and consumer activism, to a smaller extent with personal conservation behaviors, but there is some association there as well. Those beliefs are: I am certain that global warming is occurring. I understand that it is a harmful thing, that it's going to hurt us. I understand that humans are causing this, and I believe that this is a solvable problem, that there are things that we can do that will reduce the threat. Strongly predictive of those beliefs is understanding that there is a scientific consensus on the issue, that when people come to understand that 97% of climate scientists believe that global warming is real and human-caused, that greatly enhances their belief in those critical central beliefs there. So first of all, certainty that global warming is occurring. You can see this is a 9-point scale. Up there at the top, the alarmed are extremely sure global warming is occurring. The dismissive are down there near the bottom, that they are pretty sure that global warming is not occurring. The doubtful group is not sure one way or another. All the other groups believe global warming is occurring, but they are much less certain that it is occurring, particularly the disengaged, but also the cautious. In terms of understanding the causes, you can see, just as you would expect, that the alarmed, 85% of them recognize that it's happening. We see a pretty steady decrease as we move toward the right here. In terms of the scientific consensus, Many more of the alarmed and concerned understand that most scientists agree that global warming is occurring, but you can see that even among the alarmed, there are 20% who do not recognize that there is a scientific consensus on the issue. Notice also that 60% of the disengaged say, I don't know. Then let's look at the threat. How much do you think global warming is going to harm you personally? We see that over half now, or about half, of the alarmed say a great deal. And there are majorities of the alarmed and concerned who think they will be harmed either a great deal or a moderate amount. 95% of the disengaged say, I don't know. And 93% of the dismissive say, not at all. If we look at future generations, the numbers jump up, that virtually all of the alarmed believe that future generations will be affected, harmed a great deal, and almost all of the concerned believe they will be harmed a great deal or a moderate amount. You can also see that a large majority of the concerned believe future generations will be harmed a great deal or a moderate amount. And I want to show you, I'm not sure if you can see this clearly on the slide, but the change that has occurred since 2008. What we see is large movement upward in terms of perceiving that there is a personal threat. In 2008, when we did the first survey, a third of the alarmed thought they would be harmed a great deal. Now half do. The concerned 9% thought they'd be harmed a great deal back in 2008. Now it's 18%. So there is movement upward in the first three segments, very little movement in the last three segments. But among those who recognize that global warming is occurring, the perceived threat is increasing. And this holds over a whole range of groups that may be harmed. Plants and other species, my family, my community, the US. There are the data for future generations, the same kind of a trend in terms of increases since 2008. Now, the last belief that we're concerned about is solvability. Here we ask people, what do you think is going to happen? And the light blue bars, where most of the population is, say humans could reduce global warming, but it's unclear at this point whether we will do what's needed. The gray bars, which are the next largest proportion, we see humans could reduce global warming, but people aren't willing to change their behavior, so we're not going to. The dark blue bars down at the bottom, which are very small, humans can reduce global warming, and we're going to do so successfully. So there's very little confidence among Americans that we are going to solve this issue. In terms of what can I do or what can a single individual do that is going to make a difference, we see decreases in terms of a personal sense of efficacy since 2008. So here we have the actions of a single individual won't make any difference in global warming. In 2008, 10% of Americans agreed with that. We want them to disagree, right? Now, a quarter of the alarmed agree with that. Majorities of the cautious, disengaged, doubtful, and dismissive all agree that a single individual can't make any difference. This is not a good trend. It holds also in terms of how much impact do your actions make in terms of reducing your contributions to global warming. We see decreases in terms of how much difference I think that I'm making. And so what we conclude from this about these key beliefs is that over time the risk perceptions are increasing, but the belief that individual actions can make a difference is decreasing. And there is a wide literature in risk perception showing that if it's a dangerous problem that I can't solve, what do? I turn off. That people turn away from issues that are not solvable. So whenever we talk about climate change, we want to be sure to emphasize the solutions and what people can do, that they can make a difference. This is a solvable problem. That's the only way we're going to get people to be convinced that they can take action and that they should. Okay, now let's look at issue involvement and barriers to communication. We've talked about so far beliefs and concern which decline from the left to the right pretty steadily. But there is a second pattern in the data among the groups that is critical in terms of communication, and that is this curvilinear relationship. How engaged are you with the issue? How much do you care about it, think about it? And let me just show you some illustrative data here. This is the amount of thought. How much have you thought about global warming before today? And you can see that roughly U-shaped, or maybe it's a backwards J pattern here, where the alarmed have thought about it a great deal, and the concerned, the dismissive, but the disengaged are somewhere between not at all and only a little in terms of the thought they have devoted to global warming, and the cautious aren't much better than that. What that translates into is uncertainty about global warming, so that the alarmed and the dismissive are very certain of their beliefs, but the cautious and disengaged agree, on the mean is above the middle of the scale, that they tend to agree that they could easily change their minds. Now, we as communicators kind of automatically go to this kind of a model, what we call the information deficit model. It's a very rational model. It just makes so much sense. If people just understand, all we need to do is teach them how important this is and that we need to do something about it. They'll learn that information. It will change their attitudes, and then they will change their behaviors. What could be more simple than that? But in fact, that model fails and has failed repeatedly across many issues for 50 years, 60 years. We've known this, and yet it's a lesson we keep having to relearn because it's just hard for us as communicators to get it. That there is so much information out there. It is such a rich information environment. People only pay attention to the information that interests them. And we have a strong tendency to only pay attention to the information that's congruent with what we already believe and what we're already doing. So we selectively expose what we're paying attention to and avoid the things that we don't want to hear about. Second, there is a process called motivated reasoning, that when we're confronted with information that is consistent with what we already think, then we say, right, yes, 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 and we accept that pretty uncritically. If we're confronted with information that is inconsistent with what we already believe, we tend to counter-argue, try to find holes in it, distort the information. We will go to great lengths cognitively to be able to reject what we don't want to believe. Ability and motivation to process the information differs, and there are normative influences. So here we have the segments that the alarmed and concerned are pretty much willing to listen to what we have to say and predisposed to accept it. The dismissive and doubtful are inclined to reject it, to counter-argue, and the people in the middle are less willing to process the information. They already have a weak belief it's happening, but they don't care much about it. They don't think about it. And what I want to suggest to you is those middle segments are the ones that are critical for us to reach. Look at if we could move that 32% up, who are already somewhat believing that global warming is occurring, we move them up a little bit, then we have the kind of public opinion that is going to help us to get the policies we need. But there are barriers. First of all, I have difficulty understanding news reports about global warming. Notice that 3/4 of the disengaged agree with that, but even among the alarmed, 1/4 agree with that. I want to hear anything about global warming. Majorities of our bottom 3 segments. And news reporting about global warming is biased, majorities of every segment. I want to remind you, though, of what the senator said, which is that climate scientists are the most trusted sources in the U.S. on the issue. First of all, what we want to do is we want to give people the information that they're seeking. What can we do for the engaged? Why should I care for the middle? And how do you know it's happening for the least concerned? Second, using extreme weather events. Extreme weather isn't going to influence the alarmed and dismissive in terms of their belief. They see what they expect to see. But the concerned, cautious, disengaged, and doubtful, we have evidence that when they see global warming, when they personally feel that they've experienced, then they come to believe it. Third, make it easy, that this takes a lot of cognitive effort, this does not. We want to engage this kind of processing, visual imagery, the automatic processing that we do automatically without having to think about it at all. Fourth, using narratives. When you don't care about an issue, you can still become engaged with it if you care about the people involved. When you hear about the people in a story, then you become emotionally engaged, you take their perspective, and the evidence shows that there is high retention of information gained in this way. Fifth, building positive social norms. Don't tell people how many people are doing things wrong, just tell them what people are doing right. And finally, emphasize the co-benefits. There are so many good things that happen if we take action. So there they are again, and I will make this available if you want it. We have lots more information at our website, and I wanted to thank my collaborators.